Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is One Piece volume 37, 38, 39. In this case, we're going to go over 39 here in this Water 7 3-in-1 omnibus. So continuing on the Water 7 series, what's kind of interesting about these One Piece volumes is you always get a lot of extra illustrations, and obviously you have the manga background introduction page, but you always get a lot of extra content from Oda here. And yeah, this will be the, I wouldn't say the last volume I'm going to do, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break and do a different manga before I go back to One Piece and finish up the Enies Lobby side of this arc. Probably because the Enies Lobby of this side of this arc is another 6 volumes to resolve, which is, holy cow, that's a lot of pages right here. Yeah, it gives you an idea of how long manga can get for the most part. But for those of you who are wondering, each of these chapters is about 20 pages each, and so every chapter gets released in the Weekly Shonen Jump. You get 20 pages at a time. Oda usually keeps to a weekly schedule. I think every now and then he'll bump to like every other week. It kind of depends. The Shonen Jump has rotating books every now and then. So I think they kind of give some of their mangaka a rest every once in a while. But he has consistently been on a weekly grind. So if he was on the standard schedule right here, this would have taken about, a month or so to actually tell one volume. So in a year, typically, he almost generates 3 volumes worth of content, right? And you can see how One Piece is up to like 100 volumes at this point. Anyway, let's get into this. So last we left, the team, the Straw Hat Pirates, are all pursuing the government agent CP9. They're going to try and rescue Robin, one of their comrades who has kind of surrendered herself to the government. And you get the introduction of Sniper King, which in Japanese, he actually goes by Soge King. Here's Oda kind of... this is actually a play on, like, old Japanese action shows. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Japanese Spider-Man show. You should. It's thoroughly hilarious. I don't know what to say. I mean, admittedly, you do kind of have to get, Japanese culture weirdness, but the Japanese Spider-Man show is actually pretty great. But anyway, he gets together. You got Sanji, Frankie, and Sniper King, aka Usopp, right, hiding behind a mask, as they work together to take down the rest of the train. Back on Rocket Man, you get the rest of the crew. Nami kind of changes her clothes in front of all the characters, and you get Oda just having a lot of jokes and having the characters play around a lot. One of the things you'll notice in this volume is Oda, despite the seriousness of the situation, the Straw Hat Pirates are basically, starting a war against the world government and against the equivalent of the CIA in this world, right? He's just having a ball having these characters just laugh it up and yuck it up a little bit. And to a degree, for those of you who are more into the serious storytelling, it can probably wear on you a little bit compared to, say, other manga or other comic books. But Oda kind of knows his pacing very well. He knows how to flow between being funny and being serious. And it kind of shows this series is still going on, so people still thoroughly enjoyed this stuff. But anyway, the team back on the CP9 train, Puffing Tom, manages to trick the Marines into chasing them into the last cart, and then they kick off the last cart and send them on their way. And then then Sanji, Frankie, and Usopp proceed to just work their way up the train, beating up everybody. You get an introduction of Frankie's abilities, the fact that he's completely steel cyborg up in the front, and then here's Oda joking around with him having a fridge in his stomach for his cola. So you get they run into essentially a bunch of boss fights, and they're all mostly comedic boss fights. So you have here Wanzi, the cooking fighter, and Oda kind of plays around with simple shapes to make this basically comedic villain for Sanji to fight here. You get to the front of the train, and this is where it kind of Oda kind of messes with believability here. So while Sanji, Frankie, and Usopp are attacking the train, CP9 is kind of just sitting in the background, not really doing anything, and acting like, well, they're not really a threat, so we're not going to really do anything about it. It's somewhat unbelievable, and he kind of does it to push the plot forward. It's one of those plot conveniences that you kind of have to accept from Oda, while he has like a lot of fun. And this is an example of manga kind of stringing it out. Like if you think about it, right? If CP9 would have attacked the Straw Hats on this train during this entire time, Rob Lucci and a lot of these other characters, Kaku, Khalifa, etc., are much stronger than Sanji, Frankie, and Usopp, and they would have just basically wiped him out, and that probably would have been the end of this whole thing, right? But in a way, he kind of has to stretch this out and take up time and whatnot. So in Japan, this is probably desirable and acceptable. Obviously, in America, if this wasn't, a massive book that you got for, $14.99, it probably would freaking suck. But for the most part, you kind of learn to accept these things when it comes to manga, and with the price point, it's like, all right, sure, I'll indulge you, Oda. So they go through, and Sanji gets to fight this ridiculous character right here. It's pretty funny for the most part, and they all have like this running gag where everyone gets like frustrated by this character before they decide to finally split up, and then Sanji ends up fighting this guy over and over. And it's just he's ultimately stronger than Wanzi, but Wanzi kind of messes around and then makes an armor out of ramen noodles. And that's what this character's whole power is, his ability to manipulate ramen noodles. You'll kind of realize throughout One Piece that there's like very serious villains in the show. Like for those of you who are diehard One Piece fans, right? Like Don Quixote do Flamingo and the Seven Warlords of the Sea, Blackbeard. Those are serious villains, right? And in between the fights between serious villains in this manga, Oda will create absolutely comical and ridiculous villains for the One Piece cast to fight against, and Wanzi's one of them. There's a slew of other ones, and despite being caricatures and being ridiculous, he always adds enough humanity to basically all of the characters that you kind of get into it. And despite the silliness of it all, here's Frankie. He's doing the fucking pose again. Yeah, sorry. This pose makes me die every time I see it. He ran on the top of the train and is trying to run along the top to get to the front. And he runs into this character, Nero, who is basically a junior member of CP9. Meanwhile, at the front of the train, Sogeking, Sniper King, aka Soap, is able to sneak his way along the side of the train to make it to Robin to try to rescue her. So we go in, and you get a lot of back and forth between Usopp and Robin. Robin trying to explain her situation, that she doesn't want to be rescued, and Usopp, trying to tell her like, hey, your crew, they know what you're going through, and they're not going to let you just go away. They're going to try to help you. And she's trying to explain to him, you don't understand, back and forth. There's a little bit of secrecy here and background of Robin that is left as a mystery for you to continue to read on and figure out, right? And to be fair, this character has always been somewhat shrouded in mystery ever since her introduction to the crew back at the end of the Alabasta arc, which is probably the first great arc in One Piece. Another good one. That one's like from 12 to 15, if you're interested in that one. But this is personally my favorite of all the runs on One Piece. So you get some more joking around with Usopp and Robin, this time trying to convince this guy that Usopp's not there. We go back to the fight with Wanzi, and his armor allows him to basically capture Sanji and beat him up. And Sanji kind of counters this by taking out some kitchen knives and cutting up all the strings. So I didn't explain this last time. Sanji is a cook for the crew, and by his personal ethic and code, he doesn't use his fist to fight. He's always kicking people, is what you'll notice with this character. He also doesn't use weapons, because to him, blades and knives are for, cooking, and his hands are for cooking. So he only uses his feet to attack people because his hands are precious as a cook, right? And so here, since Wanzi is using ramen, he cuts it up with a knife, since he no longer is worried about attacking a person with that. So shows him how to fight with a knife. You go back to the fight with Frankie and Nero, and Frankie's having a hard time dealing with Nero's mobility. And then we go to back to the Puffing Tom, or back to Rocket Man, which is all the rest of the crew kind of screwing around right here. For the most part, it's all just joking and yucks. They run into the train that Sanji and the crew kind of released, and then Luffy jumps over there to check it out to see if Sanji's in there. And then he goes back to Zoro like, nope, nobody's in here. So Zoro, of course, cuts it in half in like a really cool sort of manga samurai scene right here. With the Japanese, you can tell like the whole ethos of samurai and swordsmen are still relevant to most of Japanese culture right here. So you get these classic scenes of things cutting in half, and the samurai like kink, like sheathing their sword and whatnot. It's kind of as relevant to Japanese culture as say cowboys and guns are to American culture for the most part, right? So. Then you run into this character, Captain T-Bone. He's kind of a fun caricature of the good cop, right? The unfailing champion for justice. And he runs into Rocket Man and Zoro, who's also a swordsman. Both of them really good swordsmen. Comes at each other, and they end up in a clash. And Zoro just crushes him and sends him on his way. So I'm gonna jump ahead right here. So. Back at the fight with Sanji, he ends up kicking the shit out of Wanzi to the point where he gives him plastic surgery, makes his face go like this is pretty boy anime look, and then Sanji kind of has enough and defeats him. Back on top right here, Frankie is messing around with being a centaur, and again you have sort of a silly fight up until the end when Frankie gets on top of Nero, and you run into they run into CP9. So CP9 cleans up the mess, and they kind of explain the situation to Sanji, pissing off Sanji and Frankie. And Robin comes out to tell them to stop fighting and that she doesn't want to be rescued. They go over, and Soge King or Sniper King is able to kind of distract the team, and they try to initiate a rescue for Robin, but in the end Robin kind of turns on them and still stays with CP9, and Frankie also gets captures too, but while she's leaving, Usopp kind of tells her like, hey, no matter what happens, you can't leave the crew without the captain's permission, which is something he knows from obviously fighting Luffy and getting and leaving the Straw Hat Pirates. So he tells him like, hey, have faith in your captain, he's gonna come and rescue you. And for the most part, it's kind of an interesting volume in the sense that it's just one long chase. So in terms of like plot, not a lot happens, which again is typical of manga, right? But in terms of characterization and development of the characters that goes on through this, a lot actually happens, right? So it's kind of that different approach. And I think some of you guys may remember my very first One Piece video where I talked about that in the Lit Dev video. It's the concept of, in the East, in Japan and Eastern culture, the idea of a character-driven story is about the character conflict and the character plot over, say, the story plot, right? And it's one of those things where you read through this volume, and if you think about it, not a lot actually was resolved or happened, but so much else happened that you kind of forget about it in terms of what in terms of the whole story overall, right? So they end up, so CP9 and Puffing Tom end up finally making it to Enies Lobby. So Enies Lobby is the endless, or the nightless island, right? So it's always daytime there. It's where the primary judicial system of the world government in One Piece exists. And here you get all of them arriving, and then when we get to Enies Lobby, we get introduced to the rest of CP9. There's 3 other members that we haven't run into, Kumadori, Jabra, and Fukuro. And these characters are kind of, again, very comedic. So Kumadori is kind of a parody or a exaggerated take on Japanese stage actors. And then Jabra is a bit of a take on sort of Chinese gangsters. And Fukuro is a very cartoonish take on on gossipers and whatnot. He's got the zipper mouth because he can't stop revealing secrets all over the place. So the rest of the gang finally makes it to Enies lobby, and when they do, they reunite with Sanji, Usopp, and Frankie, and then they have some funny back and forth right here, and then they come up with a plan to attack Enies lobby and rescue Robin. But while they're trying to enact the plan, they end up basically Luffy ends up completely ignoring the plan and just doing whatever he wants. So again, Luffy is kind of a common character in Japanese manga, which is the super strong hero that is also kind of an idiot. The most famous of which is probably Goku, right? Like, Goku and Luffy are actually extraordinarily similar, besides eating a ton and being super strong and being, incredibly stupid. So Luffy kind of breaks in and does whatever he wants, and the rest of the gang eventually follows, and a lot of it is mostly action with Luffy kind of fighting over, and Oda's kind of distorted sort of action scenes. He likes these kind of incredibly distorted angles when he's doing that stuff. He does this with Luffy a lot. He does it with Sanji. In fact, sometimes I wonder if Oda would actually be like, it would be interesting to see Oda draw like Fantastic Four, to see how he does like Mr. Fantastic over Luffy, right? But yeah, for the most part, this kind of begins the Enies lobby section where everybody assaults the island in an attempt to rescue Robin and Frankie, and it's a very, very long, drawn-out fight. But I'll go over it in due time. It's kind of one of those things where I have to kind of think about how I want to approach it, just because when you get into these like tournament-style runs in manga, it can get a little boring to kind of repeat, what's going on in the manga, because it's much more interesting to read and see it, or to watch it in, say, an anime, right? So, anyhow, that's the review. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. You got any comments on One Piece Volume 39 of the Water 7 arc? Leave it down below, and I will see you next time.